In this episode, I'll talk about a recent symposium hosted by the Baroque Equestrian Games Institute, where I was invited to do 2 demonstrations. I'll share about the event and the highlights of my demonstrations, and of course, I'll gush about how cool my horses are. Alright, so here we go, episode 138, the Artistic Dressage Symposium. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. So a couple weeks ago, I was asked to present at an event, a symposium hosted by the Baroque Equestrian Games Institute, and I loved the name and the intention of the symposium. So it was called the Artistic Dressage Symposium, and I was a presenter, Jos Severians was a presenter, and of course Bruno Gonzalez and Tina Christiana Wieder, who are the founders of the Baroque Equestrian Games, all did demonstrations. And I love doing things with Tina and Bruno. The Baroque Equestrian Games Institute is their organization, and it's committed to the preservation and the promotion and the education and celebration of the Baroque manage horsemanship. So it's academic, artistic horsemanship, and it's based on the training exercises and principles of the Baroque masters. So the Baroque Equestrian Games Institute, or the affectionate shorthand is called BEGI, started in 2010, and it was really created out of the vision and passion of both Tina Christiane Wieder and Bruno Gonzalez. And both of them were born into European equestrian families in Italy and Spain, respectively, where the principles of classical riding were passed from generation to generation. So they were both really steeped in this understanding from childhood, and they each also became avid independent students of the historical training methods and the artistry of classical riding. And they've been devoted to helping to share and bring some of that, classical wisdom to the modern day student. So their goal is really to make what they call these timeless truths accessible to riders of today. And so they've created this, what they're calling the classical competition and, master education on this classical horsemanship. So through there, you can find them at thebaroquegames.com. If you're in the video classroom, there are several videos in there where there's a couple where Bruno Gonzalez is helping me with my horses and helping to explain some of the more foundational movements and patterns. And then there's videos where I'm demonstrating at other of their symposiums, and there's videos of me helping students with some of their patterns. So we've had a connection for a while. I really love what they do. They are so knowledgeable of the history of horsemanship and dressage and when different styles came about and why and who and what kind of horses. And they're just a really, really amazing resource. And they've created these patterns that are meant to not so much be tests where you train and train and train and then you see if you can do the pattern, but they develop these patterns as a training tool. And what's really cool is they have groundwork patterns. So they start on the ground and then it goes all the way up through haute école. And anyway, I just love Tina and Bruno to death. They're very, very generous with their knowledge and their help. And so anytime they ask me to do something, I just say yes, and then I ask them what it is. The other thing that I love about them and the atmosphere that they create is it's very open to everyone, any breed of horse, even though a lot of these methods were developed with the Baroque horse, the Andalusian and Lusitano and Lipizzan, they really want to bring that knowledge to help all horses. So, any breed of horse, open to different kinds of equipment as long as it's fair and comfortable, for the horse and it makes sense. But, if you come in a Western saddle or ride bareback or bitless or with a bit, or, they're very, very open, and they will educate about, all right, what are you using and how is it working? And to be able to use these patterns, again, as actual training tools. So, again, if you're in the video classroom, dressagenaturally.net/classroom, if you just type in the search box Baroque, you'll see a whole bunch of videos that will come up that have anything to do with things that I've done associated with them somehow. And you can go to their website, which is baroquegames.com, and you can read all about them. If you can get the patterns. And if you have any questions, I'm sure they would be happy to answer them if they got an email. So the symposium itself, again, was run, Bruno did some teaching and demonstrating. I did some teaching and demonstrating. And Joost Severins, who's a Dutch dressage trainer, who's also often or is the judge for when they do the competition events. So it's kind of eclectic in a way, but what's running through, the thread running through, and what we all have in common is this sort of artistic way of approaching things. Very different in our styles in a way, but we're aiming for the same thing. We appreciate the same qualities. And I'm just really honored every time they ask me to be a part of their thing. So I think what they see in me is just the love of the horse and the relationship with the horse, which they really value. I always like learning from Bruno and watching him with his horses. And, what I took away from this event is what I usually take away from any of the Beggy events, is how precise Bruno is about creating the balanced movement dynamic, and how getting that balanced movement dynamic, which is another way of saying collection, but when Bruno talks, he doesn't often say the word collection. He really focuses on balance. And to him, that picture of balance is when they're engaged and light on the front end and carrying themselves in this elegant, beautiful way. So instead of saying collection, which can sort of seem like a shape, he will talk about the balance. And it's sort of the way I will use the word collectability rather than collection. We're increasing the horse's skills for collectability. And that, because I have that word ability in there, it becomes, more verb-like, right? It's something's happening. It's that move. It's that dynamic. And he's really masterful at it. So I'm always happy to watch him make decisions with his horses and make decisions when coaching a student or when helping me with my horses. And he takes it right back to the beginning in the groundwork patterns, where with young horses you can begin the balanced movement dynamic, otherwise what some other people might call collection, with a very young horse in a very, very easy circumstance, such as just leading them straight down a line and making a halt. But how do you make that halt? And do they halt by plopping on the forehand and dropping their energy? Or, as Bruno would do, like getting taller and not so much saying whoa, but just keeping the energy going as you get taller and stop taking steps forward. And the horse learns right from that very basic thing to be able to energize up into the halt. So I have a young horse now. Cora is not even 3. And every horse I think, okay, what am I going to do even better than I've done with my last horses or with every other horse? And for me, she's Andalusian Lusitano cross. So I'm thinking, gosh, she was born and bred for this uphill, balanced tendency. I want to still show her how to relax and let loose and stretch, but I also don't want to undo what I'm going to eventually train later. So I'm really trying to balance out this everything that I prioritize: the looseness, the suppleness, the flowing, the stretchability, but I'm also really thinking about highlighting this balanced collectability from really the beginning. So I've been thinking a lot more about the Baroque Equestrian Games and their patterns and the groundwork, adding that in. And in the last video in the classroom with Cora, where I'm going straight down the side and then hope and asking for these halts, and she halts standing up. That's all part of this. So you can sort of see that in action. And like I said, all of this really dovetails well with Dressage Naturally, even though, you can see, that's all about collectability and all this, fancy Baroque stuff. But because the principles are similar enough, and this is the key, like you can dovetail with other programs if the principles and the principles are the same, and if the priorities are similar enough. And even if the priorities aren't similar, if the principles are strongly the same, then it's just a matter of making decisions in the moment for each horse of, do I prioritize the uphill balance, or do I prioritize a stretchy let loosey thing in a moment? But that's sort of a moment to moment thing. So I did 2 demonstrations. So I did one each day. And the first one I did was a bridleless demonstration with Natia. Because, hey, bridleless is cool, right? Who doesn't love a good bridleless ride if it goes well? Well, even if it doesn't go well, it's usually exciting. But Natia is such a sweetheart. So I knew she was going to be just wonderful, because that's what she is. In fact, Natia, if she's a little bit nervous, she tends to kind of glue up a little bit. She never looks like she's freaking out, but I can feel it on the inside. She just kind of does a little freeze. It's not really freezing, but I just feel like, oh, things are not really as responsive, or there's not as much energy flowing as usual. So it's always safe. It just sometimes isn't that exciting. Anyway, my point of my demo with Natia was to show how much you can affect the balance and bend, positioning, and collectability without directly influencing the head and neck. So we talk a lot about riding from our seat and our intention and our body language, which is true even if you're using a bridle, or even if I'm using a bridle. But, sometimes it's kind of good to say, all right, well, I'm not supposed to use my hands. So Jos was saying in his demonstration, seat, leg, hand, in that order. So I thought, well, let's just see what we can do with the seat and the leg. So I, first of all, she's so freaking cool, because I can just bring her there by herself and walk into this space with a bunch of people right on the rail, and she's just cool. So I let her walk around a little bit and just talked and gave a little bit of an introduction. Then I did what I call the whatever trot. I'm like, okay, let me just let her go for a little trot where I'm not influencing her at all, so they can kind of see her natural tendency. And it always also was a good intro for her, right? So it's new space, new crowd. If she was a little nervous, like, let her just trot. Let her just have a little trotty trot around. And then went back to the walk, and then I just said, now let me just start having her think about her body a little bit more, and let her know I'm going to be talking about her posture or thinking about her posture. So I just started to play my basic alignment exercise with my legs and my seat, just at the walk. And then it transformed from kind of like a hanging out walk to a free walk, and a walk that's stretching over her back and getting looser and taking longer strides. And it's like, okay, well, now I just changed. I brought her back up, loosened her top line, and then went from there. And then once I had that, which took, it was right there, then I started doing patterns. So doing through a little bit through aids, meaning I changed my posture to a more uphill posture, and I definitely was thinking about my leg position and things like that. So through aids and through choices of patterns, I started waking her up to the idea that we are now going to be coming into a more uphill balance with lightness in the shoulders. So things like square turns, which is one of the basic exercises in the Baroque games. Square turns, also turning around the forehand. Notice I did not say turning on the forehand, but there's a way to move the hind end around the front end in a way that does not necessarily put them on the forehand. They still stay up and active. So really it's about keeping everything good and activating one hind leg more than the other, and then that causes the horse to turn. But it's not thinking, put your horse on the forehand and spin the butt around. Anyway, so through doing yields of the forehand, yields of the hindquarters, halting actively, backing up a little bit sideways each way, doing things like that, she started to go, oh, okay, I get it. We're coming uphill. And being able to add more energy at the same time doing that, and seeing that the energy, instead of going bigger or faster, went and bubbled up. So that bubbling up energy is really cool. That's when I know they're on my seat, because I can add energy and the energy stays wherever my seat is. So she was lovely with this. And the really, I think, interesting part that I kind of get all geek out over is at some point doing these movements and doing some patterns at the trot, her posture starts to get just yummy. I mean, her posture gets the way you would want it if you had a bridle on and had her round into the connection. So at the trot, we did some shoulder in where you go diagonal to the quarter line, shoulder in along the quarter line, and then yield the shoulder in back to the wall. It's another classic Beggy exercise, doing turns, serpentines, and adding some 10-meter circles in there. And all of those things started to add up. And so then she has this beautiful, beautiful posture. So that was pretty cool. And then some piaffe and school halts and canter departs and canter pirouette canter and half passes at the trot and the canter. Yes, the kind where you actually have a bend in the direction you're going, because she's so on my seat and wrapped around my thighs. So she was super cool. And, it's just so fun to be able to do that. I mean, I still get just like tickled pink just that I can ride my horse bridleless. Today I rode her around in the woods on the trails, and I'm cantering around on these trails and making turns at intersections. And, she's just a lovely, lovely horse. So that's pretty cool. But then when you can do it and really affect their posture, that's even more super cool. And I hope it really causes people who see that to think a little more about what they're doing with their hands and what they might not need to do with their hands, and to think more about what's in their seat and their legs. And what's interesting is during the Q&A, so I did have a neck rope on her, and I definitely used the neck rope to help lift her chest if I'm having trouble getting the point across. But it's so interesting that in the questions, a lot of them started to focus on the neck rope and how am I using the neck rope. And I thought, gosh, humans are really interesting because it always comes back to like, but what about the thing with my hands? Can we talk about that? And so, I mean, I know it's understandable. We have questions, and all questions are worth asking. But really, dressage is about, number one, trust, right? Because a trusting posture is closer to what we're trying to do than a fearful posture. Communication, and communication about relaxation, energy, and balance from the seat and the leg without hands. And then it's specific gymnastic movements and exercises. That's really what creates the posture. And yeah, reins should make that even easier, but it's not a replacement for any of that. It should just be a little detail of, hey, can I give you a little hint? You might want to put your head pointing 1 degree that direction. That'll make it easier. But it's really, even if you're wearing a double bridle, it's about trust, communication about relaxation, energy, and balance from the seat, and then specific gymnastic movements and patterns that help create the movement dynamic of balance that you want. Anyway, so as she went, she became more and more relaxed, and so that she became increasingly energetic and proud of herself, and I was proud of her. And I don't know, I'm just thrilled. I had a really fun ride on my horse, and got to have people clap when I was done. I ride by myself most of the time, so it was super fun for me to take my horses off the property and do what I do normally here by myself, and have people seem to enjoy it. So I was super proud. I was so excited for this. I even put like little spray glitter in my horse's tail. And believe me, I'm not a glitter person. But I actually bought some glitter. I saw it at the tack shop, and I thought, oh my gosh, my little girl Natia would look so pretty with glitter in her tail. It wasn't very good glitter. It was pretty subtle, but it was good, like entry-level glitter. I'm glitter curious, so it was my gateway glitter. We'll see if I go further in this direction or not. The next day was Ovation's turn, and Ovation is hopelessly pair bonded with his buddy Hotshot now. So Hotshot got to come along for a ride also, which is absolutely fine with me. Management for what my horses need. So I wanted Ovation to be relaxed and feeling good about himself. And if all I had to do to ensure that is bring his buddy along, then I'm happy to do it. I mean, it's sort of my fault that I let this happen. We just had some interesting herd dynamics in the last couple of years, and those two got put together, and oh my goodness, they are having quite the bromance. So anyway, I just decided to make my life easier and make Ovation's life easier and give Hotshot a little entertainment these days. And he got to go for a ride. So Ovation is 20 years old this year, and I'm just so thrilled with him. I love that horse. I mean, I love all my horses, but he is just such a freaking character. So I'm always happy to bring him out in public because, I don't know, just people tend to connect with him. He's got such a Dennis the Menace kind of vibe, while being absolutely beautiful and magnificent. So he's the one I call my magnificent goofball. But at age 20, my focus now has been really to be as efficient as I possibly can. Him learning to have that uphill balanced collectability was, and still is, not easy. It's not natural for him. He doesn't have a natural inclination for it. He's got a ton of power, really good pushing power, but not natural for collection. Now he's learned it. He can do very upper level movements. He's totally capable. It just kind of takes all of his focus and all of my focus. But here's the thing with Ovation. Over the years, because it was hard for him, I tended to, make it easy for him and not want to push too hard. But here's the thing. Halfway there is worse than all the way there. All the way there, balance, you're either balanced or you're not balanced. So all the way balanced is actually a kinder, in many ways, easier place to be physically than trying to be balanced and you're not quite there yet. I mean, we all know that's dressage at its worst, is someone who's asking their horse to be in a certain balance and they're not getting there and they're stuck hanging on each other, right? So Ovation and I have really had to focus on this. He's really flexible horse in all the places. So he can be like a real shapeshifter, and he can change from a good movement dynamic to not, with like a 1 degree change in a number of parts of his body. So he's really been a puzzle for me. And so I'm quite proud of how far we've gone, but it just never, it never ends. It's like every phase of his life, it's like, oh, and he's in a different phase. And now I'd have to learn a new trick up my sleeve. So the focus for Ovation, and I thought that he was such a perfect one to demonstrate this point, was to really think about the efficiency and being super clear. Clarity is kindness. To really get all the way there, yet have low impact, because he's 20. And here's the thing, Ovation had more soundness troubles earlier on in his life when I was, making progress, but quote unquote being really nice to him and getting honestly stuck halfway there too much of the time. So he is sounder and fitter in these last 5, 6, 7, 8 years than the first half, maybe 10 years, than the first 10 years. And the reason he is sounder and healthier is because I figured out to go ahead and get all the way there. And so it feels initially sometimes harder, but overall it's actually easier on his body to be all the way in balance. And so the point I made in the demonstration was that, and this is sort of a general guideline, is that if you have something that's not working well, figure out the movement dynamic and figure out what part of that movement dynamic isn't working. Maybe it's dropping a shoulder or unloading the hind end or something like that. And then solve that movement dynamic in the easiest circumstance. Maybe it's at the halt, or maybe it's on the ground, or maybe it's at a lower gait. And be quick to identify it, find the easy circumstance, get that dynamic working, and then later bring it forward into more physically demanding circumstances. And so that's what I did in the demonstration, is to come out and walk around on him. And then from the moment I started to connect with him, I'm being very specific. Throughness, balance, wear your hind legs, but it's at the walk. And if I'm going to walk 20 steps, why not in those 20 steps make them the best 20 steps and put a little square turn in there, or a backup, or something else that I feel in that moment is what he needs to find his best balance. And then you know what? You can let him rest again. So in walking around the arena, it would be, kind of a free walk, and then bring him up, do a couple very specific ingredients, and then let him loose again, and then bring him back up. And I had done some things at the halt even before I got on, which is normal. This is what I do with him on most days. I bring him out, check on my school halt, little jambette, Spanish walk, check I got a little pee off button happening, 3 or 4 steps. Okay, just checking it was there. Now he's in this mode of offering school halts and shifting his weight and bending his hind legs, and it's all very easy. And if you train them like tricks and you really use motivation, now he'll actually do school halt to try to get a treat out of me to try to get cookies. Like, I don't even have to ask. He's like, look, Mom, I'm doing school halt. You see that? Look at my Spanish walk. So, yeah, it could be considered annoying, or some people be like, oh, don't ever let a horse do something you didn't ask for. But you know what? My horse, my rules. For that horse, having him have an idea to maybe do some school halts, like you're warming yourself up for me. Yeah, go for it. I don't mind at all. So I kind of showed how his body changes. And again, he's such a shapeshifter that his body really makes dramatic changes when he gets himself in the posture. So that was, I think, super fun and interesting. I hope other people felt that way too. And then, got on, and like I said, doing a lot of walk and what I call fiddling. So I kind of fiddle him into collection, which means just a few steps here or there, just a little square turn here or there. Okay, just a little back up. Oh, okay, good. Just touching on it, letting it go in between until I feel him starting to bubble up. And so then what happens is he starts to go, hey, I'm ready to go. Let's go. And then just do some trot around, throw in some shoulder ins, so thinking about every step without making it hard, I make it hard, right? So instead of letting him stretch for 20 minutes and put all the weight on the forehand and then I got to do all my canter, I got to do a big canter, let him loosen up. So when you know your horse and when you can be efficient and know exactly what kind of thing you need to ask for, you can often get there quicker than you think. But it's got to be specific, and you can be, again, clear and efficient without being hard. So in a way, you're making it hard because you're like, hey, I need this. It needs to be exactly this. But in a way, it's easy because you get to the good stuff and then you can let it go. And you can thank them for it. And it's really motivating for some horses because they see this pattern of you're asking if they would do it. And as soon as they prove that they would do it, you don't do it. You're like, okay, I was just checking to see if you would. And so that's the relationship I have with Ovation, because he finds that collectability difficult. I ask him a lot, would you do it? Would you do it? Would you do it? And I try not to spend too much time using up the generosity, but if he gets to a point where he's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, okay, now we'll keep going. And so I know that this is, probably many of your plan. And the reality is when we ask, it doesn't happen. And then we have to practice trying to get it to happen. And that beautiful clarity that I can fiddle with now, yeah, it used to take me a whole session to get some of those movements that I can now have at I always say my fingertips, but at my butt cheeks. So I get it. The reality is it takes some time to get there. But I think knowing the plan, knowing you're working on trying to get this as efficient as possible is really helpful. A friend of mine who's a trainer who lives across the street from me, Sharon Jerdeman, she had a horse that she got to Grand Prix, and he was a non-sweater. So he didn't sweat. And here in Florida, that's a really dangerous thing. It gets hot here. And she trained that horse to Grand Prix in a way that never broke a sweat. I mean, not because he couldn't sweat, but she couldn't let him get hot. And so, we'd talk about this. She'd walk and do a little pee off and walk and do a little pee off and then a little this, a little that. And it was so efficient. And it did not hold her training back. In fact, I think it probably helped it. So that was sort of the model I started using with Ovation. And that's what I wanted to highlight in my demonstration. So I hope that that came through. And the most fun thing was that I had fun, and that I had fun because Ovation seemed to have fun. And like I said, I think he's really a big ham at heart. So I think he would much prefer it to have an audience every single day. So it was kind of fun for me to feel how proud he was of himself and how much he just wanted to offer and show off. And he got lots of cookies and praise during the demo. And again, I felt like I was just having one of the nicest rides with my good friend Ovation. And it was just like super cool that other people were able to witness it, and I could see other people witnessing it and appreciating it and appreciating him. So yeah, it was a good day. You know, you can't ask for anything more than having your horse do whatever you ask him to do. And yeah, I'm sure I could have asked them for even better stuff, but they were doing exactly what I wanted them to do. They were calm, they were happy, they were offering stuff, and seemed to be having a good time, and yeah, totally chill afterwards. So anyway, that's the story of my demonstrations and time at the Artistic Dressage Symposium put on by the Baroque Equestrian Games and Institute. And again, look up in the video classroom videos related to this. At the making of this podcast, I don't have those particular videos up in the classroom yet, but I think they will be there at some point. I did make I have a short like on YouTube, and I made a reel on social media, Instagram and Facebook, with a little clip from Ovation with this, so you might be able to find that. And that's it. I will see you here next week. Have a great week.